Alright, y'all, we are going to be reacting to who is the least popular starter Pokemon with Emperor Cubone with lots of spaghetti. Spaghetti! Alright, peace. Let's do it. Oh,
What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. The starter Pokemon are some of the most important and recognizable entries in the Pokemon series. They not only provide a selling point, but a window into each of the regions that they represent. So obviously these little critters are your best friend and the first Pokemon that you'll get in a game, making the choice of which starter you pick being possibly the most important even over what version you buy. But it's not a secret that some starters are more popular than others. But which one of these renowned Pokemon are actually the least popular of them all? And I don't just mean which one is least picked in each generation, but which one is the all-time least popular starter in the franchise. It might be hard to determine, but we'll try anyway. So obviously we can rule out the Kanto starters. The sheer nostalgia alone would probably do it, but they've also gone on to create multiple forms of their final evolutions with Megas and Gigantamaxing, so the fact that these are pretty much on par with the overall mascot Pikachu keeps them safe. Also, at the other end of the spectrum, we have the Gen 9 starters, who have all seemed to immediately become popular in different ways. Some people are firmly in the Sprigatito camp, already making memes for it. It seems like most people are in favor of Fuecoco, and then Quaxly's got its own supporters. I don't personally like it because I find it more like an individual character than a believable species of animal like the other two, and it's impossible to say the long-term impact these starters will have, but their embrace seems even more open than the last few already, so we'll hold off on them. The next group I will knock out is the Gen 3 starters. It's rare to get all three starters loved exactly the same, and it might not be the case here, but it's probably the closest you can find.
seems like it.
They all got Megas in Generation 6, and Torchic is loved for its uses in battle once it evolves. Mudkip turns into one of the best typings in the game, not to mention the plethora of memes that come from it, and Treecko is not only one of the coolest Pokemon all throughout its life, but Sceptile is an extremely common favorite Pokemon, especially amongst Poketubers for some reason. So much like the Hoenn Pokédex at large, their starters are some of the most balanced out there, not having a bad choice in the bunch, leading to each one of them only lifting up the others as incredibly popular Pokemon. I think the same could be said of the Gen 4 starters, perhaps to a lesser degree, but people clearly love the Chimchar line, as Infernape is quite scary to face in combat.
Man, I love
Piplup
that.
is adorable in every way, and even if Empoleon isn't universally appreciated, it does have quite a big camp, even getting a slot in Pokken Tournament when the others did not.
Oh,
Turtwig
true
could
that.
arguably be the least popular, but people do still find it endearing, and it's still the only Pokemon to become a grass and ground type, giving it a completely unique combination, just like our friend Empoleon. So to me, Sinnoh might not be equal in terms of clout, but they are definitely above water, with a possible discussion to be had about our turtle friend. I would then say the Alolan starters are probably closer to safe territory. Rowlet became an early frontrunner as it was an adorable bird ball. Litten was a little less instantly popular, but upon seeing Incineroar, many people loved the theming, if a bit disappointed that it became bipedal. Popplio, however, was not so beloved when first shown, as many people made fun of this clownish sea lion. Now, I do think the majestic Mermaid Primarina helped to soften the perception somewhat, but it does still leave Popplio as probably the least popular Pokemon that we've seen thus far. But while we're on Alola, I do want to mention the fact that Rowlet has just been another starter in Pokemon Legends, where it got a new form. This boost in popularity wasn't exactly needed for Decidueye, but I do think it was a big help for the other two, that being Cyndaquil and Oshawott. I don't think that Cyndaquil ever really had a problem, as it does seem to be the most favored of the Johto choices, but compared to the overall pool of starters is where it used to slip. But this new form definitely helps with that.
Man.
And I will say that Totodile is a
starter.
pretty solid choice as the first alligator Pokemon that became a powerhouse, even with all of the other strong water types that they already had by Gen 2. So maybe it's just me, but I feel like most people look at Totodile as a solid option if they can't have Cyndaquil. However, we then also have Chikorita, and it doesn't look great for this little walking pear thing. Chikorita struggles to contribute in its native region, and just any early route in general with all of the bug and flying threats that you'll have to deal with. This might not be most people's main concern, but it doesn't help when Meganium is not only boring, but useless. So this really is the first one that is a contender at the title. Part of the lackluster status comes from the Johto starters staying pure typed, which was less thrilling. But the same was also true of our other Hisui friend, with Oshawott staying water and Snivy staying grass, but of course Tepig had to come in and ruin it. Oshawott was decent over the years, if a little question about its choice of final evolution, but I do think the new form helps with that a lot. Snivy was pretty popular from the start, with people loving its smug attitude, and then when it evolved into the Regal Superior, it became the poster child for the contrary ability, so even more popular. But poor little Tepig had the misfortune of being forced into the unenviable position of the third Fire and Fighting starter in a row. And some people probably like the Firebeard, but it just wasn't the most natural compared to past starters, so Tepig ends up being pretty low. The Gen 8 starters are a bit harder to determine. Each one does have its supporters. Scorbunny seemed to be the most popular on release, even though it's my least favorite. People also loved Sobble's nervous attitude with all of the crying that it does, and Grookey was adorable and full of energy. And maybe this is just by nature of when they came out, but there seemed to be immediate fan art of these Pokemon. I guess that's just living in the internet age, but these starters also remained pure typed for the first time since Gen 2. But then again, they did get Gigantamax forms, so it's impossible to say how their longevity will play out, but I do think their typings could hurt them in their long-term appeal, especially if people aren't a fan of Secret Agents or football or drums. So I would say that they're in a good position for now, but there is always the chance that they could falter. That just leaves the Gen 6 starters, and right away we see Froakie. And while this little frog itself might not be significant on its own, it leads to Greninja, which is a super popular Pokemon. Not to me, but to the rest of the world, so there's that. Chespin might have a horrific middle stage, but it starts out as really cute and then becomes the powerful Chestnut that has impressive defense and offense, and is a welcome change to a fighting-type starter. But then there's also the other one with Fennekin, and it did not fare quite as well as the other two. First things first, this fox is not a dog, so the Chinese Zodiac thing doesn't work. It was a fun theory, guys, but the ancient Chinese people knew what a fox was, so if they wanted that in there, they would have done it instead of a dog. So please stop trying to put poor Fuecoco in a box. Anyway, after Braixen being a great middle stage, Delphox kind of takes a step down. Which is actually a shame, because having a wizard Pokemon starter sounds awesome until you see that it's got ear hair bigger than its head. So as much as I have come to accept the Fennekin line, they do seem to be the most overlooked starter in recent history. That being said, Braixen was still in Pokken Tournament, so perhaps it's not all bad. We'll just have to put it in the maybe pile, and in my estimation, the other likely candidates would be Popplio, Tepig, and Chikorita. Like I said earlier, they've done better in incorporating all of the starters in more recent games. So even if more people forego Popplio and Fennekin, they still have their own signature moves and are prominently displayed elsewhere, primarily since they would probably be the options that your rival would choose as the weaker ones against the more popular starters of those generations. And to be fair, Tepig did have its own signature move too, even if that never seemed to be a part of its identity like Razor Shell did for Oshawott. But that being said, Chikorita has never had anything like that, and has been consistently ignored across the board since the year 2000. So if we were just looking at starters being disregarded by the folks in charge, I do think Chikorita would take it. And I was honestly expecting that, but I also think nostalgia alone makes the fans at least appreciate this Pokemon somewhat. And while Gen 5 does have its share of nostalgia at this point, that's usually reserved for things like the story and not quite as much for Tepig. Part of that is the misfortune of having to contend with far more popular fire types from that region. And you might say, well, those are special attackers and Tepig becomes a physical attacker. Okay, but Unova also gave us Darmanitan as an even stronger and faster physical fire type than fully evolved Emboar. Also, I haven't mentioned it yet, but Tepig evolves into just the worst middle stage in all of Pokemon. Seriously, Pignite is a huge disgrace. When you combine that with the fact that nobody ever really got over that it was a tertiary repeat after 8 years of the same, means that it was a bit of a letdown upon release, and hasn't had the effort put into it to help it recover since then by putting it in any outside game or giving it any kind of meaningful revamp. I'm not saying that Emboar is a bad Pokemon, because I do like the thing, and it can be incredibly powerful for sure. So if you like it, then good for you. But I am sorry that the Pokemon Company has deemed it unworthy of aid for all of these years, leaving it to be what seems as the overall least popular starter. But maybe this will all change with the Unova remakes down the line, and the title will then go back to Chikorita. Which starter do you think is objectively least popular? Let me know down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And we'll see you around next time!
Gotta agree. See, I kinda like Emboar because I didn't really care. I kinda thought firefighting was nice. But I have to say Chikorita is probably... No, I think I say... Excuse me. I think I gotta say Chikorita is actually the least. I never cared about Chikorita like that.
For new business.
Me personally, Emboar was definitely cooler. But when it comes to popularity, I get it. Chikorita is my least favorite personally. Out of... Honestly, I think I'm actually going to say Bulbasaur is my least favorite out of every single Pokemon that's a starter. Just because he's from Gen 1 doesn't mean anything to me, bro. He's just a grass poison and doesn't really look all that cool as an evolved Pokemon. So, yeah, I think Bulbasaur is actually my true one. Chikorita is cool. It's not special, but it's cooler to me. But yeah, that's the video, y'all. Hopefully y'all enjoyed those lit and take it easy. I'm about to go build this website again.